stand ready, because you do not know the hour when the Son of Man is coming.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "There is no need to be afraid, little flock, for it has pleased your Father to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Get yourselves purses that do not wear out, treasure that will not fail you in heaven, where no thief can reach it and no moth destroy it. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. See that you are dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like men waiting for their master to return from the wedding feast, ready to open the door as soon as he comes and knocks. Happy those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. I tell you solemnly, he will put on an apron, sit them down at table, and wait on them. It may be in the second watch he comes, or the third, but happy those servants if he finds them ready. You may be quite sure of this, that if the householder had known at what hour the burglar would come, he would not have let anyone break through the wall of his house. You too must stand ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." Peter said, "Lord, do you mean this parable for us or for everyone?" The Lord replied, "What sort of steward then is faithful and wise enough for the master to place him over his household to give them their allowance of food at the proper time? Happy that servant if his master's arrival finds him at his employment. I tell you truly, he will place him over everything he owns. But as for the servant who says to himself, 'My master is taking his time coming,' and sets about beating the men servants and the maids, and eating and drinking and getting drunk, his master will come on a day he does not expect, and at an hour he does not know. The master will cut him off and send him to the same fate as the unfaithful. The servant who knows what his master wants, but has not even started to carry out those wishes, will receive very many strokes of the lash. The one who did not know, but deserves to be beaten for what he has done, will receive fewer strokes. When a man has had a great deal given him, a great deal will be demanded of him. When a man has had a great deal given him on trust, even more will be expected of him." The Gospel of the Lord. I don't know if I'm just getting old, but I feel as if life is constantly changing. You're actually supposed to say, "No, Father, you're not getting old at all." Pope Francis talks to us. He says, this is not an era of change. This is a change of an era. We are actually going through quite a monumental time in history. And that's true even in the church. It's certainly true in our society. Those of you of my age and even older than me, remember that a mere 40 years ago, people thought in general that going to church was a good thing. They didn't always go, but they thought it was a good thing. People believed that faith in God was actually a good thing. Most people in our country had a Christian worldview. That is no longer the reality anymore. That is not the reality of our country. And in fact, people think that people of faith are somewhat at least suspect, but maybe somewhat ridiculous. That they think that what faith means is believing anything without any evidence. You know, that's not faith. We hear today in our second reading from the letter to the Hebrews. That letter, for many years, people thought St. Paul wrote that letter, but scripture scholars tell us now that it wasn't St. Paul, but whoever the author was steeped in the Jewish tradition. He knew the Jewish scriptures inside out. And today he gives us a reflection on what faith means. Faith has got nothing to do with believing things without any evidence. That's just foolish. You know, as Christians, we're not called to believe without evidence. We're not called to suspend our rational minds. It's important that we have some rigor to our faith. But faith is something deeper than that. Let me define faith for you. Faith is trusting in God even when you don't understand his plan. Trusting in God even when you don't understand his plan. It's a willingness to follow God, to follow where he leads us, and to do that in trust. You know, faith is not about what we know about God. Faith is a relationship with God. It's where do we put our trust in God? You know, the question that we can ask ourselves is, do you believe in God? Do you have faith in God? They are two different things. You know, you can believe and not have faith. You can believe in God and not be willing to follow where he leads. They are different things. And in fact, faith becomes the test for belief. That if our belief is genuine, then faith will follow. It will be part of our makeup as followers of Christ. And in the letter to the Hebrews today, we hear how he reminds us of important people in the journey of faith. He reminds us of Abraham and Sarah. He says this of Abraham: "It was by faith that Abraham obeyed the call to set out for a country that was the inheritance given to him and his descendants, and he set out without knowing where he was going." Let's think about that. You know, Abraham's an old man, even older than me. He's settled. He's wealthy. He's got plenty of cattle. He's got a lovely home. He's in a peaceful land, a peaceful surrounding in what we now call modern-day Iraq. He's quite happy, thank you very much. And God says to him, you know, set out for a country. Give all this up. Leave all this behind. Just follow me out into the wilderness and set out for a place that I'll show you. Abraham has no idea where God is going to take him. No idea. God is asking Abraham to leave everything that he's secure with, everything that he knows, all his wealth, all his security, to leave that behind and go literally to God knows where. And then we move on to the example of Sarah. It was equally by faith that Sarah, in spite of being past the age, was able to conceive because she believed that he who had made the promise would be faithful to it. You know, Sarah's an old woman too. she is past the age of being able to bear children. But she believes that she will conceive a son, a longed-for son. Why? Because God made the promise, and she believed, she had faith he would be faithful to that promise. She just put her trust totally in God. So Abraham and Sarah are examples of faith to us. They literally put their lives in trust with God. They were willing to follow where God led them, to show them to a place where God would show them. You know, the question for us is, are we willing to follow God so that he can reveal to us the things that he has in mind for us? Do we trust God with our life? Do we believe that God always has our best interest at heart, no matter what's going on in our life? Are we able to trust ourselves to him, to allow him to lead us? Are you willing to leave your comfort zones and embark on a journey, an adventure to something that God is going to reveal to you in your life? Because God has a plan for you. You are significant in God's eyes, and he wants to lead you. But here's the thing about God. He will never impose that upon you. God always respects our freedom. He invites, but we are free to accept or refuse the invitation. And the invitation is to accept it, to trust him, to allow ourselves to be led to God knows where. But it will be for our good. You know, Abraham and Sarah are offered to us as examples of faith, people who trusted God completely. And here the scriptures go on to say, because of this, there came from one man who was already as good as dead himself. He was at the end of his life, Abraham. More descendants than could be counted, as many as the stars of heaven or the grains of sand on the seashore. This man who's at the end of his life, who has no children, him and Sarah, they longed for children and they didn't have any. And God is promising he'll have descendants as many as the stars in the heavens or the grains of sand on the seashore. Do you know, here's something absolutely amazing. We are sitting here today in this church because 4,000 years ago, Abraham made a decision to follow God. Isn't that amazing? That one man's decision 4,000 years ago enables us to be here today. You know, Abraham's descendants are as many as the stars. You know, we talk about the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity. We are all descendants of Abraham. Imagine Abraham had said to God, do you know what, God? I'm quite happy where I am. Thank you very much. I'm just going to live out the rest of my days where I am. Conceivably, we would not be here today. One man's decision 4,000 years ago has a consequence that affects us today. And you know that's what faith does. When you walk in the way of faith, when you allow God to guide your life, it's not only going to change your life, it's going to change the life of those around you. So your life matters. Not only to you, but to those you encounter in life. How you live your life will have consequences for other people. You know, how we live our lives as a Catholic community here in Erskine will have consequences for generations to come. At the beginning of next month, we're going to begin a new session of Alpha. And I would really invite you really to pray about Alpha. Is God calling you through the power of His Holy Spirit to embrace this opportunity to grow in the ways of faith? Are you prepared to go on adventure? To be led somewhere you don't know, but somewhere that will change your life? Alpha can do that for you. Because the thing about faith is it needs to be nurtured. You never get to a point, if you're a person of faith, where you say, do you know what, I have faith, I'm fine now. It doesn't work like that. It constantly has to be nurtured. It's like love. You know, if you have a relationship of love and you say, do you know what, I've loved enough, guess what happens to that relationship? And it's exactly the same with faith. When you say, I've had enough faith, then it will die. You have to nurture it and help it to grow, to help it develop. So pray over these next few weeks. Is God inviting you to take part in Alpha as a way of deepening your faith? And the second thing that I would ask you to do is really just to think of those people in your lives who don't know God. Those people in your lives who maybe are no longer part of the church, your family, your loved ones, your friends, your neighbours. You know, people that you're concerned about in the ways of faith. You know, think about them and pray for them over these next few weeks if you don't already do so. But do more than that. You know, allow your faith to have a consequence for them. Step out your comfort zone and invite them to come and to join our Alpha course, where they can go and explore all the questions that they have about us, the questions they have about God. They can explore it in a safe environment. You know, it quite literally is a matter of life and death. If you choose to do nothing, if you choose not to invite, then that has a consequence for that person's life. Now, your job is to invite. It's their job to decide whether they will accept the invitation or not. That's not your problem. But it is our problem to invite, to make them welcome. So pray about that. Pray about those people in your life that you know would benefit from Alpha or renewal of faith, and invite them along. Or better still, say, why don't you come to Alpha with me?